Good morning, everyone. It is now 10:52 a.m., Wednesday, December 28th, and we will rise back from recess yesterday. Prior to the recess yesterday afternoon, Ms. Representative Joel Camacho had the floor, and this morning we will open up with that. May I please invite Mr. Jesus Taisui to sit with us in the chamber. Thank you, Mr. Taisui, and welcome back.
Thank you.
Recognize Representative Joel Camacho.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Morning, Mr. Taisugui.
Good morning.
I want to start out by asking, yesterday you testified that you were not aware that there was a review panel for the FFR program, which is the Fishers, Farmers, and Ranchers. Is that correct?
Again,
So were you not informed? Just to backtrack and to reiterate what you mentioned yesterday, you weren't informed about any reviews of those applications, the $500 subsistence money for those applications.
not that I recall.
So no mention. You were not part of any of that.
Definitely, I'm not part of that.
You're positive?
I'm positive I'm not part of that.
Okay, Cam, can you
Mm.
pull that clip from December 16th? Ready?
Correspondence between yourself and I believe Ms. Sapp. So on November 23rd, 2022, at approximately 11:57 a.m., Mr. Castro, I'm asking Shane or Selena, if he can, to do steps 1, 2, and 3 of the review. I believe the boost. Would you care to clarify?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. It's a very legitimate question. So what you were referring to is text messages, I'm assuming, between myself and Mr. Arroyo. If you look at the line that says 11:23:22, 11:57 Will Castro with the asterisk FFR application review. FFR stands for Fisher Farmer Rancher Program. The FFR program in this respect is the $500 subsistence program. It's pretty straightforward. Mike, there were, again, if I could just, I'm going to share a bunch of stuff, like give you a bunch of facts that I know to be true and correct. When we had kicked off the program, my goodness, there were hundreds of people lined up outside the Bank of Saipan. Even given the existing infrastructure personnel at the bank, they couldn't handle it. Not that they're incompetent, the infrastructure, human infrastructure wasn't there. People were wrapping around the building. I believe that either Mr. Arroyo, he would have to authorize this, had allowed them to serve in an extended administrative capacity to conduct the due diligence to simply, could you blow that back up? I know I'm wearing glasses, but in this case, not helping. So if you look at step 1, verify submission of proof, these are all clearly articulated in the ads, and I believe also when you fill out the application. There's, unlike the Boost small business and nonprofit, I believe there's a clear checklist for this one, like you have to attach the proof. Verify submission of proof. Okay, number 1, verify completeness. That means you have to have filled in all the blanks. Submission of proof, which is a picture that validates that you are in fact a Fisher Farmer Rancher. And if both are validated, then place on the screened pile. That's the extent, and I interpret that, I mean, based on strictly what I read, as an administrative function. There is no decision making here. As a matter of fact, to my point, if you look at number 4, the panel, myself and 2 others, will again review and recommend to the governor for approval. So in this,
I don't know if you heard that last phrase Mr. Castro mentioned.
I do.
So again, I want to ask you, were you guys involved in that, or?
I am not involved in FFR.
So why would Mr. Castro mention that to the committee under oath?
That's only mentioning 2 or 3.
That's a
Maybe.
requirement. If you look at the list from 1 to 9, those are requirements for FFR, and you guys are included in that as panel reviews.
I am not part of this review panel.
I find that very odd, Mr. Taisugui.
I also find it very odd that he only say 203, but there's no name mentioned here. There's no name that I was mentioned that I was part of the panel.
So then again, I ask you, who does this? Who reviews this as it's part of the requirements?
I am not part of that panel. I don't review FFR.
So, like what you stated yesterday, you only review applications for small business.
Small business is correct.
I yield for now, Madam Chair, and do later.
Thank you, Rep. Camacho. Is there any other member who would like to ask follow-up or clarifying questions at this time? Recognize Representative Leila Staffler.
Thank you, Chairwoman. So you said you were not on the panel for FFR, but you guys did travel to Tinian and Rhoda to support the other boost programs, correct?
Which other boost program?
The small business and nonprofit boost.
Yes.
Were there also groups that traveled with you for the FFR to Tinian and Rhoda? Do you recall?
Not to my recollection.
Okay, thank you.
Any other member? Recognize Representative Tina Sablon. And
you.
for everyone's benefit, the exhibit that was just posted is exhibit number 4040.
Thank you, Chair, and welcome back. Good morning, Mr. Taisugui.
Just one second.
Could you explain to us how well you know your business partner, Miss Alexandra Jing?
Very well.
How did you first meet?
Oh. Well, she's she reached me out because she was interested in a family property, and she was referred by an individual that knows me, that knows my my sibling who owns the property. So that's basically how we met.
How long ago was that?
Oh, gee. Quite some times back.
Like 10 years ago? 20 years ago?
Probably almost 10 years ago.
Okay. And what other business ventures have you shared with Miss Jing?
And this is where I wanna comment and clarify that, because there was in the newspaper today that it is a grave misunderstanding, probably through the statement that was made in this chamber. And it was stated that some of the businesses that Taisugui partly owns is the Flower Tea House, Saipan Goddess, Saipan Horse Course, Sakura, and Love Birds Restaurant. Let the record reflect that I do not own this company, except I am part owner of Lovebirds Restaurant. And I want that the record to be cleared, because for some reason, this came out
Thank
in
you,
the
Mr.
newspaper.
Taisagi, but any misunderstanding is on the onus of the reporter. We did not make any statements yesterday alluding to those that you are trying to clarify today.
I think this one, because Congressman Kamatsu was saying, I benefited from all this company that was awarded, the boost grant. So I just want to clear that to this, that the only company that I have a financial interest is Lovebirds Restaurant.
So noted, duly
Okay.
noted.
And the rest of this, the reason why I recused myself is because of business associates and being the resident agent to two of this company, which is I'm a resident agent for Flower Tea House and the Saipan Horse Course.
Thank
The
you.
rest is just business
Duly noted.
association. Okay, thank you.
Madam
you may
Chair,
take
point of
that up,
clarification.
You may take that up with the reporter of the Marianas Variety.
I will.
Madam Chair, point of clarification.
State your point. of
The
clarification.
reason why I asked the question, Mr. Tyson, was to get some clarity, and you did clear that up. But I did not make that assumption that and I used the word indirectly. Indirectly. Thank you.
Representative Christina Saban, you still have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for that clarification, Mr. Taisagui. Okay, so you met Miss Jing about 10 years ago. She was interested in purchasing property from a family member, and she reached out to you, and that was how you met.
Yes.
And what other business ventures have you shared with Miss Jing?
That's it. The Lovebirds restaurant, which is a DBA under Elite Group.
Under Elite Group.
Yeah.
And what is your share of ownership in Lovebirds Restaurant?
45%.
Okay. And so you weren't previously involved in, was it Bridge Investment Group together before?
When the pandemic sets in, I closed my private office,
Mhm.
and then there was that opportunity, and I was hired, and she was my colleague.
Okay. So you work together?
Yes.
Okay. And then for her other businesses, Flower Tea House and Saipan Horse Course, you said you're the resident agent. What about for Saipan Goddess and Sakura Group?
No, I am not the resident agent there.
But what was your relation with Saipan Goddess and Sakura Group?
None,
But you recused yourself, you said, from
because
those.
of my business association with the owner.
And that would be Miss Jing.
Yes.
Okay. Are there other owners in those businesses that you're associated with besides Miss Jing? Or is it just Miss Jing for
For which one?
all of the ones that you said you don't own but you had conflicts in? Besides Miss Jing, are there other owners with Flower Tea House, Saipan Goddess, Saipan Horse Course?
Saipan Horse Course, I believe, she's the sole owner of that,
Okay.
and the Saipan Goddess as well. The Flower Tea House, which operates under Sinamay Jing's Investment Development Incorporation. I think she's the 100% shareholder there, but there is a board member as well. That is in,
I see.
and then that's it. And then the Lovebirds, that's where I have the financial interest on that one. That's why I recuse myself.
Okay.
Point of clarification, Madam Chair. My apologies. Did you just say that you were a part owner of Lovebirds?
Yes, that's why I recuse myself. I have a financial interest on that
Mr.
one.
Taisugu, yesterday you also testified that you're also a co-owner or a shareholder of Elite Group. So that
For,
makes it two.
for clarification, Congressman, uh, Lovebirds Restaurant is a DBA of Elite Group LLC.
But they're two separate companies. Is that correct?
It's a DBA.
Meaning they,
You know, when you
meaning
have
they
an entity,
Mr.
right?
Taisugu, meaning they both got awarded boost funds.
They don't both get awarded.
It shows on the record that they did.
No, Elite Group LLC is the entity. You know,
Madam Chair, is it okay if we can pull up that list? Do we have that list? I just want to get some clarity.
Which list?
The list of the awards that were given to these companies, because it shows that Elite Group and Lovebirds both got awards.
I don't think that's the case.
I can point, like one of the exhibits, if Cam could bring us to part 8, page 63. There's a list of different companies that were awarded on Tinian during a check presentation event. And Lovebirds and Elite Group are listed separately.
Well, I'm not sure as to why is that, but Elite Group LLC is the entity. DBA Lovebirds Restaurant.
Okay. But the checks that were distributed to Lovebirds Restaurant. It was to, the checks were made out to Lovebirds Restaurant. Correct? There were two
I'm,
checks.
I'm not sure. I need to ask my partner on that one.
Okay. If I may continue.
My
Connie?
apologies. Thank you.
Thank you.
You may proceed.
Okay, so going back to just Lovebirds Restaurant, you opened this restaurant with Miss Jing on Tinian in what year?
He testified yesterday.
I think she, she's doing all the management, so I think sometimes in February, I cannot accurately recall whether it's 21. I think it's 2021, February 2021,
Last year. In
last
February.
year.
Okay, okay, so it's a fairly new restaurant then. Okay, and Mr. Tarsagui, do you have a personal relationship with Miss Jing as well?
Personal, can you define what's personal?
Is she a friend? Is she a girlfriend? Is she a domestic partner?
She's not a domestic partner and she's not a girlfriend,
Okay.
she's a good friend.
She's a good friend. Okay. Now, the communications show Mr. Will Castro personally following up with the Bank of Saipan on Miss Jing's grant applications and her checks. And Cam, if you could please pull up the exhibits. Let's start with part 5, page 6. Yes, could you zoom in a little more? Okay, scroll up a little bit. So on October 5th, 2022, so this is fairly early on in the Boost Grant program, Will Castro, in a message to Mr. John Arroyo from the Bank of Saipan, follow-up, who is Alexandra Jing, owner, Elite Group, LLC? John replies, mistake, I'm reviewing all and found it was included, taken out now and will send new file, and then scroll down a little bit more. And John says at 3:12 p.m. October 5th, my bad, this is Lovebirds Restaurant, approved. Will Castro, okay. And then again, if we could go to part 8, page 62. Is that the very top of the page? Could we scroll down a little bit more? Oh, there. On October 21st at 9:48, Gina De Leon Guerrero from the Bank of Saipan asks, are we including Lovebirds and Tinian shipping checks in the package to Tinian? Will Castro, yes, please. So they were included in one of the very first check distributions that occurred on Tinian. Again, on page 63. So the next page, Cam. Okay, and then this is that list that we just saw. Lovebirds, number 1 on the list for check presentations on Tinian. And then also Sakura Group are among the companies that Mr. Castro personally follows up on. This would be page 21 on part 8. There's Elite Group as well. Sakura Group. Here, Will Castro, asking about the Sakura Group check. October 27, about 2:48 p.m. Could you zoom in a little bit more, Kim? Sakura Group check is with whom, he asked. Karen from the Bank of Saipan. I can have delivered. Let me know. Do you know who he delivered this check to?
I really, now seeing this, I'm just kind of a little bit surprised that I have no knowledge of these things. I don't know who he delivered to.
Is it surprising?
Yes, it kind of surprised me, but I see it in front of me. I guess the best person to ask this question is Mr. Castro.
Right. He followed up on other
Mm.
applications of Ms. Jing.
Mm.
These are just some examples.
Mm.
And did you attend the check presentation on Tinian for Lovebirds?
No, I didn't.
You didn't.
Mm.
You stated, Mr. Taisigui, that you recused yourself from the discussions involving your business, as well as Ms. Jing's other businesses.
I did.
But what was the nature of the discussions among the remaining panel members, Mr. Castro and former Secretary of Finance, Atelig?
What discussion?
Their discussions, their deliberations regarding Ms. Jing's and your application. What was the nature of the discussion?
I have no knowledge on that. I recused myself.
But didn't you say that you stayed in the room? You didn't leave the room when they were deliberating on these applications.
I didn't recall I said I stayed in the room or I walked out.
You don't recall being there at all when they were discussing these at least 5 applications that they ultimately recommended funding for?
I have no recollection on that one.
So how did all of these businesses rise to the top of the stack to be so important and so unique that Mr. Castro himself, a member of the review panel, the governor's chief of staff, and the governor's re-election campaign manager, would follow up on these applications himself, personally, and these checks?
I wish I can answer you on that one, but I have no knowledge and no recollection on those.
Was Mr. Castro intervening in these applications on your behalf?
I don't know. Just based on this one, it seems like that's what he's doing, but I guess the best person to ask is Mr. Castro.
So you're saying Mr. Castro just took a personal interest in all of Ms. Jing's applications, including yours, all on his own,
Well, maybe ask Mr. Castro.
without your intervention?
I did not intervene. And I am under oath.
And you expect people to believe that somehow these applications were
Well, I don't
all
know.
prioritized somehow without any other
I do not
intervention?
have any knowledge.
Besides Ms. Jing, did any other business associate of yours apply for a boost grant?
I don't have any business associates other than this one that are listed.
Okay. Now, you stated that the most recent meeting of the review panel was about 2 weeks ago. We discussed this yesterday, right?
Yes.
That was the last one, about 2 weeks ago,
Yes.
right? And shortly after that review panel meeting, there was another issuance of checks on or about December 13. And that was the last time the Bank of Saipan distributed checks for the Boost program.
To my recollection, yes.
Okay. And you said that at that most recent meeting of the review panel, it was just yourself and Mr. Castro, right? Who reviewing the applications.
I might have said that.
You did say that. And former Finance Secretary David Atelig, he would have been off island at the time, right? So he was not present. Correct?
I might have said that.
Okay. Yes, you did say that. And you did say that the Commerce Secretary was there as well, but he wasn't reviewing applications. What was he there for?
Because there was, whenever the Secretary of Commerce is there, because there will be other discussion about the program as well.
Mm-hmm. What was the discussion of the program during that meeting?
I don't recall.
You don't recall, but you were there.
Yes, I was there. Yeah.
Okay. So Flower Tea House received its second boost award of $200,000 during so after that meeting about 2 weeks ago. And altogether, from their first boost award and then their second boost award, received a total of $325,000. Did you participate in the decision to issue Flower Tea House its second boost award of $200,000?
No, I recused myself.
You know that for a fact.
I know that for a fact.
So if it was only yourself and Mr. Castro reviewing applications on that day, then only Mr. Castro
We do
made the
not,
decision to issue that second award?
we do not review application for the second round because that has been done
When was
Yes.
that done?
prior to the second round.
When was that?
Sorry, I don't recall that.
It would really help to have records, wouldn't it, Mr. Tessigui?
Perhaps.
Madam Chair, I can continue unless you'd prefer that I yield for this round.
I have one question for Mr. Taisui. So you said you do not recall or you do not review those who were awarded a second round because a review has already taken place. Is that correct?
Correct.
And you've also mentioned that, or we can basically tell from the facts if you were not at that particular meeting to approve the second round because you recused yourself, that Mr. Will Castro was solely approving or telling Bank of Saipan to go ahead and print the second award. Is that correct?
I'm not sure how he would do it, but I recused myself in the first round. And in the second round, there's no review of the business plan because it's already been reviewed.
So we've asked you several questions with respect to your business associate, Miss Alexandra Jing. So you expect the people and this committee, the two committees, to believe that it is purely coincidental that this company has been awarded um, over $1 million. The lady who owns these businesses has been awarded over $1 million because they somehow rose to the top of the stack of applications. And that's purely coincidental because of the uniqueness of her business, or can you enlighten us a little
I
bit?
have no comment on that because I recuse myself in any of these uh, applications, whether it's coincidental or what. I really cannot comment.
How about businesses associated with the former Secretary of Finance? It's purely coincidental that his family, his immediate family, benefited while you were sitting as a review panelist.
I
Would you like
cannot
to
com-
enlighten us?
I cannot comment on that, whether it's coincidental or what. But
Why
it,
not?
but it was vetted and it was discussed and we arrived in a consensus with the recusal of the former Secretary of Finance.
And you're absolutely certain former Secretary David Atalik recused himself?
Absolutely.
Based on testimony from John Arroyo, he didn't even see David Atalik coming to Bank of Saipan to review applications. What do you have to say to that? You're telling us David Atalik recused himself and was actually part of this panel, but he was never seen at the Bank of Saipan.
So I cannot talk for John, for Mr. Arroyo.
But you saw David Atalik at Bank of Saipan reviewing applications.
We occasionally review this, and Mr. Atali is present when he recused himself.
Is this whole panel, this whole boost program, you are a member of the reviewing panel You've already testified to that. Are you guys subject to the Open Government Act?
I have no knowledge on that.
You don't know about the Open Government Act, or do you not know about whether you are subject to the Open Government Act?
I I do not have knowledge whether we're subject to no
But you
open
were
government.
sitting there as a representative of the Department of Commerce, specifically the Secretary of Commerce, and you were sitting there as your Economic Development Director hat. Is that correct? As a government official.
Right here.
When you were a member of the review panel, you were sitting in those
Representing my boss, yeah.
Department of Commerce
Yes.
and in your capacity as the Economic Director, Development Director. Is that correct?
Correct.
As a government
As a
official.
as a designated.
Sure, but you're a
Yeah.
government official, right? You're certainly not there in your personal capacity. Is that correct? Are you there in your?
No, I don't think so.
You don't think so?
I
So
because I was designated to represent the uh, Secretary of Commerce, then that would then be in my official capacity.
in your official capacity, you are a government official. That's
Okay.
correct. You, sir, and that panel are subject to the Open Government Act. You are required to keep
Mhm.
minutes. You are required to keep records. That panel has just violated the Open Government Act in so many ways. And that is why we keep asking for these guidelines, your notes, your minutes, at the very least. All government meetings should have minutes or journals. Would you say now that it would have been better to keep records? That panel just violated a CNMI law.
Well, I cannot comment on that without the guidance of a legal counsel. Whether that is so or not.
But you were sitting in your official capacity. What makes you think you're not subject to the Open
I have
Government
no
Act?
knowledge on that, whether I'm subject to government act or not.
One moment. Council, can you pull up the Open Government Act? Whenever, I have a question while we're waiting for this to come up. Whenever you guys would meet as a panel, as a review committee, did you guys announce it to the public, subject to the Open Government Act? It must be published 72 hours prior to an official meeting.
Well, that's it. That is beyond my scope, Chair, Madam Chair.
You're sitting panelist representing the Department of Commerce, and that is outside your scope. It's an official meeting, is it not? Where you review and approve, where action is taken.
Yes, there action taken.
This is the Open Government Act, subsection 9904, meetings declared open and public. All meetings of the governing body of a public agency shall be open and public, and all persons shall be permitted to attend any meeting of the governing body of a public agency, except as otherwise provided for by this chapter. The governing body shall afford all interested persons an opportunity to submit data, views, or arguments in writing on any agenda item. Did you guys ever keep an agenda?
Not to my knowledge.
Not to your knowledge. The governing body shall also afford all interested persons an opportunity to present oral testimony on any agenda. The governing body may provide for reasonable administration of oral testimony by rule. Even we here at the legislature are subject to the Open Government Act. We publish our agenda 72 hours, as you have witnessed and experienced. We provide for public comments.
Madam Chair, I came here in good faith to engage in providing information. But when you're pulling up to me now with legal things, laws, and all those things, I think this is the time that uh, perhaps I would need a legal representation to be able to guide me in all these inquiries. Whether do I understand this or do I aware of these things? I came here in good faith. But when you're going to start showing me public laws, legal things, then I guess I should be afforded a legal representation.
We're just asking you as to your personal knowledge. And we appreciate you coming here in good faith. This is just part of the inquiries, Mr. Taisagui, whether you knew that the panel was subject to the Open Government Act, but we will move on.
So I already mentioned that I have no knowledge of that one, and then you pop this in front of me. I think when you start popping these things in front of me and inquiring whether I do know, I guess I need a legal representation too.
Duly noted.
Okay.
We will
If
move
you
on.
if you ask me about the process and all those things, I can share that with you. But when you start questioning whether I know about you're subject to liability because the Open Government Act, I guess you should afford me a legal representation.
We will move on. We already have your testimony on record. Representative Tina, recognized Representative Leila Staffler.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Mr. Taisagui, yesterday you repeatedly said that there's room for improvement in the Boost program. How specifically would you improve the program?
Well, yesterday you guys were asking me how I feel. Those are basically after the fact that we are doing my role as a review panel. Uh, for now that you're going to ask me how would I improve that, I do not have any comment at this time to your statement as to how I would improve it, because the fact remains that I am not part of the program development. So I cannot attest as to what transpired during the development of the program when I was just designated to be a member of the review panel.
But even as a member, you don't reflect to think about how it could be better so that you wouldn't have to be put in this position today? I mean, there's nothing that you would, try to do to avoid being in this seat?
Well, I'm on this seat because I am part of the review panel. But for you to pick my mind as to how I would recreate this one, I have no comment on that.
Okay, that's fair enough. Yesterday, you also mentioned that you had nothing to hide. And there were a lot of questions that you declined to answer, and you even pleaded the fifth. So if you didn't have anything to hide, why wouldn't you answer those questions?
Well, because I'm not sure legally and all those things. That's why I said that, uh, so that I will not hurt myself or hurt the company, because I am not legally represented. That's why I took my fifth. But at the same time, I mentioned that you'll have the record.
Thank you. I guess it's because of all of the community outpouring of concern with all of the different ways that the Boost program was administered that leaves a lot of question. I mean, like, for example, the fact that all the businesses you have associations with were granted boosts. Even though you said you recused yourself, but you stayed in the room. And the fact that there is no documentation anywhere about any kind of conflicts of interest or that there was recusals at all for yourself or for any of the other members in the panel. We asked if it was a competitive grant. You said no. You said it's also, you also repeatedly said that it's not a stimulus. And so if it's not a competitive grant and it's not a stimulus, it's hard to say what it actually was. We do know from the record that Will Castro did message John Arroyo Communications to show that John would pull out certain applications like the one that you saw on the message for Lovebirds and Elite Group and so many others that were just particularly mentioned in the messages. And it just depends on what Will asked for. Did you yourself also request for certain applications from Mr. Arroyo via email?
No,
So the only time that you interacted with the applications was through face-to-face at the bank?
at the bank, yes.
And when you were there, sometimes Mr. David Atalig was there and sometimes he wasn't?
Yes.
Chairwoman, did we ever ask for video from the bank? Did they have that?
Not yet. We reserve the right to do so.
Just curious. Because then that could easily dispel any question about who was actually present. And maybe that's what we should do if that's the case. There's concerns from the community because there were no rubrics, there's no record, no rating form, no documentation. Yet hundreds and thousands of dollars, millions of dollars actually, were given away to businesses arbitrarily by collective consensus. And every application that was reviewed was approved. There were no disapprovals. And honestly, it's just something that the community sees was fairly unclear and clearly unfair. So I yield. Thank you.
Thank you, Rep. Staffler. Is there any other member? Recognize Representative Tina Sapone.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Going back to this, the process by which second rounds of awards can be issued. Can just one panel member order for the Bank of Saipan to issue the second round check?
No, I cannot comment on that because there is no process in terms of the, since the panel already reviewed the business plans
Mm-hmm.
and they already made a concession determination, already approved by the governor and issued by, forwarded down to the program administration for final processing.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot comment on that. There's no process other than to have the panel convene. And like I mentioned yesterday, that my input to that is that if there will be a second round, then those that were awarded no should be considered first so that it can be helped with their business plan.
Right, but there wasn't a process, you're saying, for deciding who would get a second round
It is
and when they would get a second
process.
round?
The process is basically the collective consensus decision of the panel.
Right, you've
That's
said
the
that.
process.
But can just one person on the panel say, okay, this company gets their second round, issue it on this day? Did that ever happen?
Come again?
Can just one person on the panel say, okay, Bank of Saipan, issue the second round for this company on this day? Did that happen?
For the second round, it's already been the company has been already vetted and already awarded. So your question, can it happen that that company be awarded the second time?
No, not everybody got a second round, right? Just some companies got their second round,
Because the process is still.
including the Bank of Saipan, including Lovebirds,
Mm.
right? There were certain businesses that did get second rounds, and a couple of nonprofits even got second rounds. So my question is, can just one person on the panel, because you said you weren't even involved in Bank of Saipan's awards, first or second round. You weren't involved in Lovebirds, but with Lovebirds, there were only 2 panel members at the time. So can just one panel member, if you recuse yourself, David Atalik is gone, only one panel member, Mr. Castro, can say, give
It
Bank of
has it
Saipan
has to
their
be
second
two.
award?
It has to be two.
At least 2.
At least 2.
You know that for a fact, that not just one person on the panel said, Bank of Saipan, give this company their second award.
It has to be 2 panel to make that decision.
Mhm. So in the case of your company, Lovebirds, when you recused yourself, and only Mr. Castro was left on the panel because Mr. Atelig had been gone since the beginning of the month, who was the other person who decided with Mr. Castro to give Lovebirds their second award?
That's a very good question, but I cannot answer that. I don't know how when I recuse myself, I don't know how whether they communicated or how they do it.
And so you don't know for a fact then
Yes.
that it wasn't just one person deciding to issue the second award.
I have no knowledge on that one.
Okay. When you recused yourself, did you say specifically why you recused yourself? Like, did you say, I am a part owner of this business, so I recuse myself? Or I'm
I
a
would have-
business
I would-
agent?
I would have probably indicated that. I
Did
would
you-
have indicated
Did you or
that.
not?
I would have indicated
You would
that.
have said so.
Yes,
And you did say so.
I believe so.
And what about Mr. Atelig? When you recall that from time to time he recused himself, did he say specifically why he recused himself?
I cannot recall that.
You don't recall him ever saying, this is my son's business, I'm going to recuse myself. This is my sister's business, I'm going to recuse myself.
Not to any of my recollection.
But you probably would remember something like that, right? If he said, this is my own son, I'm not going to participate.
I'm not gonna guess it. I'm under oath, so
Mhm. Okay.
I don't have any.
So you don't
recollection.
recall him ever saying anything specific like that?
I know that he recused himself, but to specifically as to for the reason, I can only clearly say about how I did it and what I
Mhm.
said, but I cannot recall.
And how about Mr. Castro? Do you recall him saying he recused himself for any applications?
I don't recall. I don't recall Mr. Castro recusing himself.
Okay. Now, how would you know? Well, you already said you don't really know, right? If Mr. Castro ever made decisions unilaterally about awards and checks to be cut, went to hold checks even. But going back to like the second round of awards, you don't know if Mr. Castro made decisions by himself, right? And because there were never any records
I
of a
have no
vote.
knowledge on that one.
But you also never kept a record of a vote, right? When you met as a panel.
There's no record kept.
Okay. Did you, when you declared your conflict in the Lovebirds application, Did you specifically say, I own this business? I have a personal interest in this business. I have a financial interest in this business. How did you characterize your interest?
My recollection is I have a financial interest in this business.
Do you think that made the panelists more likely to vote in favor of a recommendation for funding?
No,
No, you don't think so?
I don't think so.
Why don't you think so? You were among the first to get an award.
It appears to be, but I don't think so.
Number 1 on the list for Tinian.
It appears to be, but I don't think so.
Why don't you think so? You got one of the
Because-
biggest awards.
Well, I recuse on that, so I cannot talk on how they evaluate that one
Mhm.
and how they arrive at the consensus.
Now, I'm not asking for a legal opinion, but are you aware of the government ethics code that applies to you and all public officials?
Well, probably I need a guidance of a legal representation for that question. So no comment.
Just for your awareness, the government ethics code, section 8535, Title 1, requires government officials to state their recusals in the meeting minutes.
I have no knowledge on that one.
I'm just stating that for the record and for your awareness.
But if you're gonna pop this, then I guess this is the time that I need to have a legal representation.
I'm not asking for a legal opinion. I'm not even asking for a reaction, sir. I'm just letting you know. If we're going to think about how we could possibly improve the accountability and integrity of a program like this, it might help to brush up on the government ethics code and keep records of votes and records of evaluations and records of recusals in the meeting minutes as required by law. Yesterday, Mr. Taisagui, when you were asked to comment on the fairness of your business and your business associate collectively taking over $1 million in boost grants, and also whether you should return that funding, you stated, quote, "Everyone is privileged to apply." What did you mean by that?
Well, the program is designed to encourage everyone to apply. So that means everyone is privileged to apply.
Okay. So everyone is privileged to apply. But isn't it true that not everyone is privileged to be awarded?
Can I speak in my vernacular? Sasina must be articulate in a soku.
Sure.
No.
I will ask that you, when you speak in vernacular, to give me time, pause, and give me time to translate for the other members or interpret for the other members. Thank you.
With all due respect, no, Madam Chair, no, concerno lo na dang ginuusay ilingwahiyo na debili no ma-translate no kloro dyan accurately gi alpha finono. Uli para gi nigat na kwaha siya lachi no izomo translation za
Well, you didn't
no-
raise up those concerns then.
ay lo pogo no concerno sa umuzong gi gaseta.
And that is not
Well,
our doing.
Well, tutungo
I want to reiterate that to you.
Well, tutungo
Whatever misunderstand, there's a reporter right here. You can take
Mm.
it up with him afterwards.
no tutungo talo ko dinansisti para bay sedio sa pon translada I finonoo gi lingwahiyo anay tisinyo na sigurado na I domo translation no kabalis jan dinansi anay esta gi niga ulipora na gwaha siya na finoo no sinyasta no mulachi gi translation.
The
Lo,
witness is
tapansi
raising
muna.
concerns about the interpretation yesterday and that he claims that I misinterpreted some of his words. However, I did remind him that he did not raise any concerns or any adjustments, except on a few occasions when he did correct me as to what his true intention was. But he's now raising concerns that he doesn't know if it's right for me to be translating or interpreting the language. And I told him he can raise up his concerns anytime that you feel that I misinterpreted. We have court certified interpreters available, Mr. Taisagui, and I want to remind you, you did not let us know that you were going to speak in vernacular. Usually other witnesses will let us know ahead of time so that we can arrange for court
No.
certified interpreters. But you may proceed.
Well, tungo po din no lo Madam Chair.
Well, I don't know about that,
No.
Madam Chair,
Lo jangin inigi necesario na
but if that is
poromatsogi,
necessary,
pues, no malagazo na by usay no na pribileyo da ugwaha no
you now want to pause the proceedings because you want to avail of court certified interpreters.
sabay filmano tomorrow sa
Because I will
utagi para
speak
bifina
it tomorrow.
by utagi para by no fino English no lo uli na kulang gagadun so gi fino English na.
He
Pues,
wanted to try to speak in English, but he realizes that he stumbles in English. Go ahead. Was
That-
that a wrong interpretation of what you just said?
no ay dinansya
No, it is correct.
Pues na no gimagay pabisang na gi tutun na with all due respect and if you manod sa moro jo gi
I wanted to say in the beginning that when I spoke in tomorrow, you may proceed.
no all due respect no pod rason na sinya mas articulate inasoko gini
For the reason that I can
importante na hearing na
articulate
No.
in this important hearing,
pesa no tagi pago pa bifino English wini kulan no gagadun jo gi para ba articulate di para ba opisi
when I tried to articulate in
Congresswoman
English, I stumbled when I tried to reply to Representative Sablon.
jamungan na pod fino English lachi na palabra uusa da atsuudzo da no pues estige na rason na by fino no lingwahiyo sa sinya mas by articulate inasokod sa sinya para by opya.
It is for this reason that I want to articulate in Chamorro so that I can reply.
So if I may continue.
You may
Madam Chair,
proceed,
with my
Rep.
question. You said everyone is privileged to apply, Mr. Taisagui, and the question was, isn't it true, though, that not everyone is privileged to be awarded?
Tay mano ko gi fineni na
Just as I said in the
na
beginning,
na istina programa
this program
ma decidi para revitalize
was decided to
jan
revitalize
para enhance economia
and to enhance the economy
para expandi tax base.
in order to expand the tax base.
Pues
Right.
anay pues gikinumprende ko niste na programa
Based on my understanding of this
na
program,
ma-open niste para todos
when they
iman
opened it to
interesante.
everybody,
Jan lokwe gikinumprende ko
and also
ti
based on my understanding,
stimulus siste na programa
this is not a stimulus program,
Yes, yes, you said that.
todos para ufan
That-
manoi
everyone would receive
no ukomprendiha sa esta
would be given rather,
ma-ipubliko siya
because
through
the public was informed
i-publications na
in the
ilelek niya na
publications,
i-application is subject to funds
and the
availability. Jan
application
lokwe
states
no i-programa
based on
sinya
the availability
ma-terminate
of funds.
without advance notice.
Yes, we've heard you say this, Mr. Taisigui. But the problem is that not everyone is even privileged to have their applications even reviewed. Isn't that right? You said that yesterday. Not all the applications were reviewed.
Ano na palabra privilege na
That
no
word
ikomekiling niya
privileged means
na todo para ufang pribileyo niya
that all are privileged.
sa taymano ilekun na ti
Just
boost
as I
program
said,
na
this is
para
the
ufang
boost
pribileyo
program,
todo
that everyone
usangan
would
na
be
kalaksan
privileged. I said
na
previously
guahaten ki manoy guati manoy
that
subject
some
to
will
funds
receive
availability.
and
I
others will
programa
not.
jang ginesta taja esta fondo pues tenikin no subject no
When funds run
no na
out,
paro mauchum without
Right.
advance notice.
Right. So let's talk about the privilege then of one panel member's business and his associates being among the first awardees to take over $1 million from this program, more than 10% of the initial 10 million. That's privilege, right?
Tibay sangan na pribileyo no.
I wouldn't say that was privileged.
Todo no man no sinya man aplika, todo sinya man ma-review.
Everyone
No,
can apply,
dyan
everyone
gin
can
ma-review.
review.
But not everybody got reviewed, Mr. Taisigui.
Tarabiya na Di
Not
man
yet.
na dyan.
When?
It's not done.
Mauli ka na question.
That's a good question.
I know it's a very good question. You don't even know when the next review session will be. And you don't even know whether there's even any funding in the program. You didn't even know that the Bank of Saipan said that they weren't going to disperse
Yes, you are
any more
right. You are
funding.
right.
So isn't it
You are
time that
right.
we stop misleading people and saying your application hasn't been reviewed yet? The program isn't done
Inige
yet?
dinansi, di ma-review tabi aplikasyon niya.
That is
Di
correct.
misleading no,
It
na
hasn't been
dinansi no, na di
reviewed.
man ma-review.
It is not misleading.
No, pues tibay usa no naman mislilit itauto siya.
I wouldn't say that we are misleading the people.
So let's talk about the privilege of another panelist, the Secretary of Finance himself, personally submitting the applications of his close family members, and all of them got boosted.
Tisina by mensiona por otro panel lo
Cannot
sina by
mention about
sangan
another
por
panel, but I can
walk
say
na may
to
sa-
estimate.
That is evident in the record. And the Secretary of Finance also following up on those checks for these applications of close family members, even before the applications were completed and approved. That's privilege too.
Taje zo knowledge nino.
I don't have any knowledge of that.
And then what about the privilege of the single biggest boost grant awarded in this program going to the boost program administrator? Bank.
Taymano ay liko.
Just what I
Taje zo
said,
knowledge ko no.
I don't have any
Esto
knowledge of that.
establish no na
I've
di
already
pa
established
participado
that I didn't participate
ma-review i
in
Bank
the
of Saipan.
review of Bank of Saipan.
And then the privilege of the very first nonprofits awarded hundreds of thousands of dollars. These startups that are associated with another review panelist, who also happens to be the governor's chief of staff and re-election campaign manager. That's also privilege.
Taje zo knowledge nino.
I don't have any knowledge of that.
You're a review panelist. If
Ungan-
Mr. Castro
ungan
recused himself, you were part of the award.
Enoy do mo statement ne.
Yes, but your statement,
No un talabibiran ni para kasi pangwading zo.
you are twisting. Can you repeat that? You are twisting.
Di palabras mo ni pangwading zo.
You're you are twisting your words to trip him.
I am stating facts from the record, Mr. Taisigui.
I-record na in nalizo na I have no knowledge nino.
Records you have shown me, I have no knowledge of.
Records that you should have knowledge of if you were a panelist reviewing these applications that the others recused themselves on.
On badgering zo nino. You should have knowledge. You're badgering the witnesses ta.
Mr. Taisugui, I want to
Um,
remind you, you freely came here without counsel.
Unggan na
Yeah.
matuzo umago without counsel in good faith. Lo jang
Yes.
inesta para by ma-badger na para by ma-cake
And we respect the right that you have a right to counsel. Yeah, we have the right to counsel. We respected that yesterday when you repeatedly said, I plead the fifth. We respected that. However, it does not give you the right not to answer the questions.
Mr. Taisugui, my intention is not to badger you, but you were a review panelist making decisions for millions and millions of dollars in public funds. And so maybe there are some hard questions that you need to be asked, that we need to ask, because people are demanding answers. And going back to the question of who is privileged in this program, without rigorous documentation, Mr. Taisugui, or even a real process that ensures the integrity of this program and accountability for these funds, isn't it possible for insiders in the Boost program and their family members and associates to take millions of dollars from this program while the vast majority of applicants get nothing at all? Isn't that actually what happened?
Tibay comment niya no sa tinigi masusedi.
I will not comment as to that because that is not what transpired or what happened.
Guaha process.
There is a process
Guahay na comprendi na
There is an
jang gien siya
understanding
koso na
that
unsenti
I
na
feel
conflict ko debidi non recusal.
there is a conflict, you have to recuse yourself.
And it's still your testimony that all these applications that did get awarded, your business associates' businesses, the Secretary of Finance's family members' businesses, the other organizations associated with Mr. Castro, all of the Bank of Saipan's business grant application, it is still your testimony that all of these applications and the awards that total millions of dollars, if you take them all together, they were just picked out of a stack, reviewed on this ad hoc, almost random basis, and they just happened to miraculously float to the top of the stack to be prioritized for payment for very generous awards. That is really your testimony, that was the process?
Izo ko testimony ani mafaisinzo of a process.
My testimony, when I was
Esta
asked what is the
declare
process, I
of
am
a
clear
process.
what the process is.
No.
But you can't explain how those businesses somehow,
Us-
all of those together with all of their connections, it's just a coincidence?
I told you,
Usangonyo the sige ng sangonyo put coincidence and no siya. Esta usangonyo to
keep
of a
telling me.
process. No.
I told
Sige
you what the process
repeat
is,
no
you keep repeating
coincidence ipumalo
that
ni timan manon.
coincidence.
Este no siya establish esto sangonyo jo na ikinumprende ko
I've already
na
established that based on
titodo
my
teniki man
understanding,
receive.
not everyone will
No,
receive
sa stimulus program is
because this is not a stimulus program.
Esto established loqui na
I've already
i-process
established also that the process
na nagizagwaho taymano then
within
offer
me,
available
how
kada matotsungo gini gilamasan i-review panel para
every
by
time I sit on the
review
review panel,
i-business plans. Esta todo
I
no
review the
usanga
business plans.
no.
I've already stated
lo
all that,
siga
but you
un
keep
faisin zo neno zam
asking me.
unin sistema isinintemo pot bula tauto man mangumplelin. Zanen nitutungo
You
at yan
keep
siya na tauto man
insisting.
mangumplelin. No? Tun
One moment,
diskulo
Mr.
sa siya na
Taisagi.
tauto.
You keep
Pues
insisting that, and
no,
you keep asking me just because a lot of people are complaining out there.
no. Za esto establish no siya za siga man
And I've already
ilikwam zo
established all that.
kimandilikwam zo.
And you keep
Za
going
un
around and around in
fafaisin zo
circles.
parewa na question.
And you keep asking me the same
Kada
questions,
uno.
each one of you.
Pues gizagwa na
Mr. Taisagui,
ulipare no na
Mr. Taisagui,
badgering i-witness esta.
Mr. Taisagui,
By me,
do
I
you
feel that you are badgering.
do you really expect people to believe, knowing what they know about who got the awards, how they're connected to review panelists, how they're connected to the Republican Party, how they're connected?
There again, you're asking me.
Do you think no
Do you
people
do
will
you
believe?
really expect people to believe that this was a fair process?
Siniha na ti perfect i programa.
It may
No,
not be a
Todd's
perfect program.
perfect.
There's no program that is
It
perfect.
It's
is
again a
far
told.
from perfect.
That is why
On that,
It's almost
on
opinion
that
mo
we
no
agree.
your
no
opinion,
On that
no
we agree. This is
no.
far from
It's
perfect.
again a leleko na
that's why I'm saying
anong fa sinzo
when you're asking me,
the sigaw repeat it.
and I keep
There's
repeating,
always room for improvement. No. Este no establish ano siya.
I've already established all
Lo
of that.
sigawa na
But you keep
nakilulo ki i question mo ja fa sinzo
twisting the
da
questions around and you keep
fanan
asking me,
no un sesya na para bay u matumpo.
and you
Iliko na lang yung gwali,
You
joko liko
think I
kanso
will
gini tibay
stumble?
matumpo sa gwahay, joko protection no gini. Jopes lo janggin tay gini na forma na no
I have
Congress
protection if
woman
this
na
is the
tapon
format
siya formation
that
no
you
no
keep asking me.
no un reward tay mo question mo
You
ja
just rewording your
paron
question
entrap jo ni.
and you're trying to entrap
Pues I
me.
think istige pago na
Then I
tempo na
think this is the moment
na nisisoro na be
that I
fangon ni ijoko abugo
to bring an
no
attorney.
sa
You may
kung
very well
pues
need an
siya
attorney at this point, Mr. Taisagui.
I think so sa I
Yeah.
think I'm being badgered gini mo gi.
No, not for that
No.
reason. Not for that
Gizo mo
reason.
opinion mo na lo gizo
Yeah.
ko opinion mo lo Christy na. Dalilig mo no. No,
This is
lo
my opinion.
inigi
You're saying
opinion
no,
mo.
but that is my opinion.
No.
Madam
Mo
Chair.
destiniga.
Madam Chair.
Short recess. We are now back from recess. It is 12:05, and at this time, I would like to recognize legal counsel, Mr. Tyron.
Mr. Tysagui, you're free to have counsel, but just recall that the committee has already advised you that we respect your right to counsel. Your right to counsel is one that we respect and we want you to afford yourself of. But if you refuse to bring your counsel or you elect to not bring your counsel, that is not a reason for you to refrain from answering the questions. We're going to take a break from now. We're going to come back at 2 p.m. And at 2 p.m., you can testify with or without the assistance of counsel, but just keep in mind, sir, respectfully, that your invocation of your right to counsel, we're not denying you. We're just reminding you that that doesn't give you the right to refrain from answering the questions. You understand?
Oh, comprende.
Thank you. This is Masi.
We will take a lunch break and come back at 2 p.m.